Good morning, everybody. So thank you for the introduction. I'm Annalie Ander. You can catch me at Annalie Ander on Twitter. Feel free to tweet and ask me questions during the session. I can follow up or later on. So yes, a little bit about me. So I work at Zendesk, and it's not SanDisk, the USB company, so I get that a lot, like, do you work with the USB external? No, Zendesk. I'll explain a bit more in a minute, but it's just my accent. And I used to work at these companies as well, Seek Possible ANZ, so I have experience working in B2B as well as B2C, in-house, and also working agency side too. So Zendesk, just a quick note for those who don't know Zendesk, it will add some context to the rest of the talk. We're a customer service software company, so we have many products under it, and with these products we can support lots of different channels, email ticketing, chat, phone, and like social media and Facebook message support as well. So I'll be using this friendly kia. So if you're not from New Zealand, it's one of our native birds. It's a curious bird, and in this case, I'll be using it as a UXer. Some of the things I'll be covering today. So Alessandra yesterday talked about like similar themes about international research and culture and impact, contextual impact. So this morning I'll be taking you through how we do it and how we learn from users in their environment. We use very scrappy and both scrappy and elaborate methods. So today I'll be covering, why bother? Why should you visit your users? I'll use the term users and customers pretty interchangeably. How to go about planning and getting ready for it. What to do on the actual visit when the day comes. And then like how to counter any challenges that may arise. So first, the impact on the teams and part of the business. So your users are actually your best resource. So one of the things, just quickly, it really helps with building the roadmap. For teams who are unsure, like what to prioritize next, they need some more information for a decision. Visiting or talking to your users in their context really helps add color and context. Closely aligned with the roadmap point, understanding more about your user can see what problem you really need to solve for, and it helps avoid wasting time on the poor product market fit. So getting buy-in from the users. So your users or customers are more likely to vote with their dollars and purchase in the future by feeling that they've contributed to your final product. And building relationships with your users to increase longevity. So having a face or names to people who've built the product really make the creators more real and human as well. Contact and communication helps with the relationship between the user and the business, creators and producers. And making the user a reality. So for teams such as developers who don't actually normally get to go out and see users, this is really nice to help them ground their work on something, particularly if it's beyond your location or a culture that you're familiar with. So I've had customers talk about how they never get to see or talk to users before, so getting out there and getting out of the office has been a real novelty for them. So I get asked often, how do you sell it to your stakeholders? If it's not something that you do normally, how do you get buy-in? So you could use those reasons that I've mentioned before. You could also propose something that is a low cost or commitment. So it doesn't have to be part of every process, for example. It can have a higher return on effort and time, including dispersed knowledge if you have a cross-functional team going with you. As I mentioned before, you can help assess product market fits, and you can also trial it out and see how it works. So how do you prepare for it? You've got buy-in now. What should you do to get ready for the actual day? So it's good to introduce the concept internally so people get excited, they're knowing what's going to happen. Perhaps you could consider your town hall or getting senior stakeholders buy-in, getting sales support, getting other functions like PMs and developers really interested or marketing. The second part is really reaching out to your users. So there's two ways you can do it, bulk email and mass email out to a whole lot of people, or individual personalized emails. In my experience, when we send out mass emails for requests, we get between a 5 and 20 or 30% response rate, and a much higher rate if it's individual, much like if you were to receive, a newsletter versus like a personal email. And then the third thing is thinking about the purpose of the visit, like what do you want to achieve while you're there? We try and keep these visits quite general. We try and get a broad understanding and then potentially hone in on things as appropriate based on like particular upcoming projects. So identifying the right user, how do we know who we should be talking to? So you might consider a couple of things. Are they a new user? Like that you want to understand what they're intending to use your product for. Are they fringe cases? They're users who've stopped using a certain feature, or they're using a feature in a very interesting way. Or are they basically your common user? Are they like what a majority of your users are doing with your product? A tip for finding those users who may be interested is getting involved with community forums. We do that, social media. If there are recent requests to your team or company for help. We also partner with our sales teams, those who are very customer or user facing as well, or using a customer database and CRM if you have access. So, for example, personally I had to learn SQL to start my research to really narrow down a broad search in our database and then find users based on product use, amount of users that they have, and location. So as I mentioned before, it's good to keep it really general. It allows you to make a lot of different discoveries, things that you may not have thought of, those aha moments. It's really great for that. The advantage of going general is that you get this breadth, but the downside is that you don't get maybe so much depth, and maybe there may not be as much impact on the roadmaps, but it does build out that knowledge about your user or customer. You can go specific and make this part of your research plan if you have a project in mind or an initiative, and this discovery work will also give you some impact on your roadmap. Some of our team does a mix of both, and then we'll get very specific into a product and find out more about how to improve that. So keeping it local. The reason being is that local is easier to facilitate. If you want to get a cross-functional team or people in a pinch, it's far easier logistics-wise, and you can go and see them in their environment as well, the user themselves. Otherwise, consider remote. If you can't do it local, remote is fine. Ensure you have like a really good setup. For example, consider like a room with a decent screen and sound system so that everyone who's in the room can see and ask questions. Like let the customer know in advance that you're going to record it, and let them know about, for example, software or things that they need to have prepared, or who should be in the room. Like you want to save time for both parties, and you want to avoid fumbling around. Time is precious, and people need to know how to get ready for these sessions. Even better, you could tack it on a pre-existing work trip. So if you have to go somewhere, it's a good opportunity to learn from a variety of environments. We do this as well, so we've gone and seen our customers in Manila and San Francisco, and it's been very helpful to understand different setups and like cultures and users around the world. So internal users, also a great resource. They're easy to reach, and they're potentially using your product day to day, either for their personal needs or potentially for their work as well, which is what's in our case. So here's an example of one of our sessions. This is with our Manila team. They are actually part of our support team as well. So this is a remote call that we have with them on a regular basis. And so it's remote. There are internal users. And what they do is they provide support to our customers. So their work revolves using our products heavily. And we're able to observe them working. We get firsthand what their pain points are, where we could provide them better tools. And then an added benefit is because they're customer facing, they also get a good understanding of where customers are struggling, what they're frequently requesting, and like in terms of priority, how often these things happen. Potential attendees, anyone and everyone. I've chosen an example, a number of roles here, but it really could be anyone from the organization. And we've found that really experiencing it brings it home, it makes it a reality, and it's better than a report. And as I mentioned before, it really helps with dispersed knowledge. So what questions should you ask? What should you plan to think about or ask the user before that session actually happens? So background, routine, and behavior, anything related to the user themselves. You want to get to know them really well, to understand what motivates them, and to give you some grounding in what to ask for later. So you could ask them about who they are, what they do, how long they've been doing what they do, their habits. It really depends on like your product or what you're working on. And then the context of the product. How often does it get used? How long have they been a user? How long each time do they use the product? Where does it get used? For what reason? On what device or setup? At what time of the day? What else is the user trying to achieve? Really determine if there's an environmental or atmosphere effect on the product and its usage. And then other users. Who else, apart from the key user, is using your product? Are they colleagues, spouse or partner, children, friends? How are they related to your user? Are they using the product in an unintended way? Is it markedly different? Do they share the product? If you can consider or work out if you can talk to them during that time that you're with your user, that's even better. And then the product usage itself. This is the best time to watch the user live with your product. Are they using it in that way that you've anticipated or planned? Where do they get stuck? Why does it get used a lot? And try to get them to narrate what they're trying to achieve or what they're doing at the time, so you can really understand what they're thinking, and does that match what they're actually doing? And then workarounds. While watching the user, are they doing something really strange with your product? Are they getting some unintended value that you had no idea was happening? Or are they integrating it with something else to improve it for them? And if they are, like, delve into this. Why are they doing that? And how have they figured out how to do that? Have they gotten support from somewhere else? And experience with alternatives. It's a good time to ask like what their experience was like with alternatives. Was it good or bad? Why would they choose your product? What were they expecting and what were they looking for? And things around like what influenced their decision. Even if it was a first-time experience, you could also talk to them about what was it like being a new user? How was the onboarding experience for them? And is it what your team or your company had intended? Why is your best friend? So when I was younger, I used to ask why a lot, and I'm mindful that, you know, you can be perceived as a petulant child if you're like, why? So this is your chance to really use it. I use it as a clarifying question. So sometimes a user will say what they think they want you to hear or mention a couple of things off the cuff without realizing it. That could be a gem right there. Usually I would be like, why did you say that? What did you mean by that? Can you tell us more? Would you mind rephrasing that? And all of these can lead to unexpected, insightful discoveries. And I've rephrased these slightly, so again, like you don't come off as this child who keeps asking why. You're really wanting to have a conversation and find out more. You can use this when a user doesn't understand what you mean or what your intended question is. And I also, pro tip, I also use it as a way to buy myself some time if I need to think about what I should be covering next. So yeah, stick with it, especially if you really feel like there's more to what the user is saying. And I think this was mentioned by Amanda yesterday, giving the user value. What we do is we always carve off time for that session. It has to be worth it for the user too. Sometimes they want to interact with you because they want to feel heard, they want to give feedback, they want to understand what goes on in the business, and they just want to be demystified about the whole process. Yes, you can pay them, and if it's a consumer for a B2C business, you might have to. But for B2B businesses, what we've found in our experience is that you want to interact with customers who have a vested interest in giving feedback, helping grow that product that they're going to be using. So roles on the visit, who's going to do what? So we have a couple of roles here. We've got the interviewer, that's the main person running the session. It's good not to have too many people asking questions all the time because the user can get bombarded and it can feel like a panel interview or something like that. Note taker. So have at least one, 2 is ideal, and make sure all the moments are captured. Even if you're recording the session, it really saves on transcribing later, and the freshness of your findings are always more impactful. A photographer or person taking videos and media, they're in charge of helping you collect these material to help you with your storytelling later on. And background filler. So this is important. It's someone to collect the data on that user. How long have they been using your product? What plan or level are they on? What devices do they use? What questions have they been sending to your team lately? It saves with time, and it also saves you asking questions that you could have answered before the session, so you can really delve into the really interesting stuff. And then logistics. This is last but not least. Someone to make sure there's a taxi booked, there's the right address, and the way to get there. So I've made this mistake before overseas. We were meant to go to visit one of our customers, and we went to the address in San Francisco rather than Palo Alto, which is a good 45 minutes away. And suffice to say, we wasted that meeting. It was a bust, and we ended up going to get cookies instead. But nonetheless, all of these roles are important as each other, but logistics, making sure that you get there and know how to get there. And then ad hoc questions. These can be done by everyone at the session. I'm sure that the note taker, photographer, or background filler have questions, but yeah, the interviewer should be the primary one at the start. So here's an example of the mix. So we've got the product manager, the UXer, the marketing person, and the developer, and all those roles can be interchangeable. So briefing the team. This is really important. You need to help with those who are not normally customer-facing or user-facing. For example, you could cover, like, let's do one question at a time, let's wait for introductions first, and who has what role, so people know what to bring and prepare for it beforehand. And then how to get there. Do we meet at the office first? Shall we meet at the user's location or elsewhere? Just so you know that no one's left behind and there's this awkward moment. And then what to wear. So in our office, we wear flip-flops, t-shirts, and shorts. It's very startup friendly, but maybe not so friendly for our business customers. So it depends on your organization or the user and like the culture in the company. So, okay, the visit is now about to happen. We've gone through why, you've got buy-in, and now we've gone through what to prepare, and it's going to happen. So the session itself, as I mentioned, it's good to have that introduction. I've heard of teams like really jumping in there and bombarding the poor user. Your poor user has no idea who they are, and it really catches them off the back foot. So it's always good to warm up the session and start with pleasantries. And then set expectations. Who's there? What can they expect? We usually set the expectation that we're there for good and bad feedback, everything really, because often people want to only give you the good feedback. And then asking permission. Is it okay for us to take photos or videos, any kind of media? And then also, what's it going to be used for? No, we're not using it for advertising. It's for internal use only and that kind of thing. And then give the agenda. What's the time going to be spent? How is it going to be spent? When will they have a chance to ask questions? Maybe if we can have a tour of your environment, if that's okay with you, if appropriate. And then by setting the agenda, the user knows that there's a time box for their questions later on, and there won't be so many going off in a tangent on various discussions. So walk around. So after your discussion, it's really good to walk around. This is one of the main benefits of visiting a user in their environment. It can lead to interesting observations. You can see the product in use, you can see the other users. It's a main advantage of like a simple interview. It's something that can't be replicated as well remotely unless you ask the user to walk around on their laptop. So take pictures. I mentioned this before, but you could use snaps or Snapchat video boomerangs. Experiment, review the pictures or media later. They can really lead to interesting discoveries, things that you may not have picked up in person, and they're also great for storytelling. Plus, it's an excuse to play around with stickers and social media and non-work apps. So here's an example of one of the snapshots of a user visit. It's showing a designer observing our user's setup. And this picture actually shows us a lot. So it shows us the devices he uses, the other apps he uses. He has 2 screens. One is external. He's Apple-based, which can impact a lot of the products and the design decisions. And we can even see how he communicates with his colleagues. And not from this picture, but we can see from the visit, it's a loud and animated environment. Contrary to when we went to Manila. So we saw our users with a completely different setup, hardware-wise, and also team-wise. So it was a different way of using our product. And even the way that the team in Manila talked to each other was very, very different. And this helped us consider things like font and contrast based on the hardware that we saw in Manila. So wrap up. Now it's time for those user questions. You've done your interview, you've walked around, you've observed things, answering things about the product or business vision, things that aren't so company sensitive, that might give them an idea of what's coming up next. And then also think about things that need a follow-up and thanking the user for their time as well. So after the visit, okay, the session's done. Share any way you can. Like we put things together, everyone's notes, photos, media together, create a full debrief and slides too. And the key thing is really sharing, and reuse. Get it used for other projects. It saves on building general knowledge and around your user, and mention things at town halls. We do a demonstration at Scrum demos and offsites, and we also put them on our intranet by tagging products or mentioning keywords so that people could pull up this pre-existing work. You could even add, like I mentioned, Snapchat, where you can add notes and stickers. And what we do is we download them, we don't post them online. And the benefit is that they're snackable videos, which are short for colleagues to get a taste of what was seen, and for people who don't like to read. We reuse these findings in other projects as well, as I mentioned. And then we refer people, if there's a specific product or problem that's been mentioned, to other teams who are working on that. And we may even recontact the customer again. It helps because you've got that relationship with that user. And other colleagues of mine have turned information into posters and placed them around bathrooms and urinals, but unfortunately I don't have a photo of the urinal example. So here is a couple of examples of these Snapchats that I mentioned. So our feedback has been like, oh, we love it. It feels like I was there. I was part of that visit. More please. And you can really see like the workflow of like the environment and how, in this case, the customer is answering a chat and talking to their customer. And as I mentioned, the setup. So we use Slack a lot. We have this Slack channel for research. And I found that presentations and videos on Slack are far more effective than simply emailing a wordy document around. As I mentioned, a lot of people don't like to read. So with storytelling, it makes it more real. And we use this channel to answer questions and also share information. You can use it to track what's interesting, how many reactions you get, what resonates, and then tweak moving forward to get more interest with internal users. So as I mentioned, help your users post-visit, connect them with the relevant teams, especially if they mention a pain point. It means that both parties really get value out of it. We do it once a month. I guess for exercise, I mentioned it like exercise should be done regularly. I hope people are exercising more than once a month, but we do it once a month, but keep it broad in general. We also have tried it daily for a week when there's a lull in product development. So there are ebbs and flows. So challenges, oh my gosh, how do we actually get this in place? I get asked this quite a bit. So when introducing the habit organizations, we've come across some challenges ourselves, and here are some ways that we've tried to solve it. Bam, bam, no budget. Especially if you're trying out, it's the first time. You could keep it lean and scrappy. As I mentioned, you could do remote. Or if you need to think about things like incentivizing, you could think about giving company swag or upgrades to your products or things like that. Here's another example of where we had no budget. We wanted to introduce user or customer visits to the engineering team. So we actually brought in a customer to interview into a pre-existing internal scheduled event. And so they kind of get an idea of what the visit might be like before signing up and before needing to think about setting some time aside to be able to do the activity. So I think one of the speakers, Lucy, also mentioned about helping developers getting exposed by observing or participating. And so here we get them to dip their toes into it, also by submitting questions through our Google Slides question feature that we use, and then I rephrased them so that the questions weren't leading, and we kept them very broad. No time. Maybe you could consider having a roster that changes who's in charge of organizing it, share the load, create templates for efficiency, maintain a list of customers from your support emails or sales teams or sales interactions. So you've got this pre-existing list to go for. So here's an example of a template that I use to save on time, and we use it almost every time we have a session. It gets distributed to everyone who's attending, and personally I like to print it off and write on it, but it's up to you. We always include the background information so people can have a quick look about the user before we visit them. It saves us a lot of time in preparation, and also it's handy to have all your questions there ready if you get stuck. Or here's another challenge. You end up over-contacting the same users. People can be a bit worried that you're spamming them. So when you have a smaller user base or some popular users that are interesting and get contacted a lot, you can consider partnering with other roles or departments, maybe reaching out to a user who's being talked to anyway by sales or marketing, or getting support from your company. Yeah, it's a good idea to tag along. So again, I've covered why you should bother. It's something that's really low effort, something that can be tried once and it really makes the user a reality. How to identify the right customer, getting them ready, how to prepare the documents, running the visit, what the introduction, sharing what the user can expect. After the visit, sharing on various channels, media, really sharing and getting it out there. And then how to handle those challenges. Try using those methods I mentioned. Cover off issues with lack of time, money, or talking to the user too much. Really get scrappy about it. That's where we've found we've got most success. So yeah, thank you all for your time. Get out there and talk to your users. If you have any questions or simply want to chat, you can find me at the booth or tweet me. Feel free to connect. Thank you so much.